Hello and welcome to another fully live Q&A episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Cody Kinsey. I'm a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have our special guest co-host on, the producer of the stream, Michael.
Hi. I guess I'm not a Sasquatch hunter anymore.
You've been less active with the Sasquatch recently.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's just not in season,
You know,
guess.
it's ghost season, you see. So you got to hunt the ghosts part of the season. The fall is more Sasquatch season.
Got it. All right. So every week we get lots of questions both on the stream and also on our YouTube channel. And we like to set aside some time to answer questions live in the chat and also go back through some of the questions that make sense or aren't illegal so we can give you guys some answers to your questions about cybersecurity, hacking careers, and really anything you want to know, especially maybe any projects by our friends like Stefan, who is going to be on the stream, I think, later next week. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And if your questions aren't answered on the stream, because we do have a lot of questions, then you can always feel free to drop them on the YouTube channel, and Michael will take a look at them every week and gather them together for them to be answered. So yeah, so great to see everybody in the chat today. 8-Bit Oni, Zam, by the way, I still have your purse, Zam, so don't worry. It's successfully tracking us everywhere.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't understand that for a second.
Zam's handbag has been with us for a very long time now, in the form of a tracker, which I've taken apart a couple times, but is still transmitting. So also, if you have any questions about using air tags for stalking, I believe either we or Zam can probably answer that for you at this point.
Security research. Let's not encourage other activities.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and roll with the first question. And also, hi, Skater Morris.
Okay, so the first one is from one of the videos we did recently. All Wi-Fi protocols up to and including WPA3 has security flaws. Why not just hardwire your entire network and not use Wi-Fi?
Why not just use a pen and paper? In fact, why not use a parchment and ink and a quill? Really take a step back and say, no, technology, I'm not going to be convenienced by you. This is the thing. Like, if you want to be productive in this society, it is really hard to ignore certain technologies like Wi-Fi. So if you just completely give up on securing it, then, there's things you could do that are just a little bit more of a compromise here to still get the functionality of being able to not be hardwired, like have your phone hardwired into an Ethernet cable or something.
That one would be very difficult.
No, it's not difficult. It's annoying. It's annoying. And it basically makes it so that you can't participate with the rest of us doing all these cool things. So can you set up like WPA3 on like an expensive router and make it on like a segmented part of your network that doesn't expose anything else and really lock that stuff down? Absolutely. It would take like a day and maybe just watching a couple of tutorials to make a relatively safe network that even I or somebody with a lot of resources would have a pretty hard time breaking into. And if they did break into it, it wouldn't really do them any good.
Yeah.
They would be stuck in a very narrow, very firewalled connection that wouldn't allow them to break out into any other areas unless they had a lot of resources. So if you're like the NSA, then yeah, like go ahead and use a pen and paper or whatever, and like hardwire everything, segment the networks. But if you're a normal person that doesn't want to completely isolate your computer from any possible threat, then going dark, as it were, is not your only option. Like yes, it is scary to know how easy it is to hack Wi-Fi, but there's a couple twists you can throw in someone's way that make it so impractical to do so that there's easier avenues for going after you that they would probably pursue, before investing like tons of time and energy into defeating a network that's pretty well defended.
That's where I always try to stress like threat modeling, right? Like, are you like the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or are you just Joe Schmo, right? Like, if you make yourself not the lowest hanging fruit, unless you're a specific target, then you're probably pretty fine.
Yeah, so Zam also points out that wired Ethernet is also super insecure. So, like, if you have any open Ethernet ports or anyone who's able to connect to this network, there's just not a lot of security once you're into an Ethernet network. There's a lot of stuff you can do with a physical connection or if you get physical access. So yeah, it does require physical access, but it also has somewhat less security than a wireless network might have, where it assumes that a connection is untrusted, whereas a Ethernet connection may not.
Okay, onward. So next question is kind of similar. What about setting fixed MAC addresses on your router and using a VPN? Or are those prehistoric measures.
Using a VPN, absolutely. By the way, do you know which video this was on?
Yes, this was on the Neighbor from Hell video.
Okay. So using fixed addresses is basically meaning you're going to try to like whitelist everybody, and you're going to try to make it so only devices that you approve can join a network. That's cool, but the problem is I can set the MAC address of this computer or like this microcontroller or whatever else around me to whatever I want. I can spoof any MAC address, including the MAC address of a device that's already part of the network and maybe just not used very often. Let's say it's just like, I don't know, like a speaker that you don't use all the time or whatever else. And it would be relatively easy to just kick that device off and take its place on the network. Now, there would definitely be ways that you could keep an eye on that device and see if it was doing any suspicious behavior it had never done before. But that requires an extra level of network monitoring that most people don't want to deploy. They just want to have a whitelist that allows some devices and then no other devices are allowed. But in reality, it's just so easy to kick one of those devices off and take its place at the table effectively that, like, you know, you get to pretend to be a device that's already allowed on the network. You totally defeat the MAC address filtering. But, you know, the other point, the VPN, that is always a good precaution. Like encrypting your data and tunneling it to another endpoint is a really good idea if you don't trust the network. And frankly, you know, you shouldn't trust the network, or at least your internet service provider, to manage your data for you if you don't want them to. So running a VPN, provided you trust the VPN provider, at least as much as you trust your internet service provider, is, in my book, always a good idea because it does protect you from local attacks.
Yeah, well, and you always have to be careful which VPN provider because, you know, sometimes those can be targeted attacks in and of themselves.
Yeah, so there was one question in the chat, which is, where should I start for ethical hacking? So one thing that is a difficult place to start with that is there's so much in ethical hacking. It really depends on what you're passionate about. If you are interested in pen testing, then you're probably going to be gravitating more towards how to find vulnerabilities and report them. If you're more towards blue teaming, maybe you have a bit of an IT background, then you would probably want to maybe focus on things about defending or detecting attacks. But if you're more into computer science, then maybe you want to go into reverse engineering and understanding what these programs are doing. It really depends on where your focus is or what your interest is, and figuring that out early, because cybersecurity is a huge career field. And frankly, you know, if you're interested in teaching people about cybersecurity, you could go into education or sales or marketing, like we kind of are. And, you know, we could do all sorts of things around cybersecurity that play to your particular strengths, because frankly, there's no way for any one person to learn all the different roles in cybersecurity, like be an analyst and be like a chief information security officer and like all these other roles that people need different skills for. So really, it depends on what skills you're bringing to the career and kind of identifying like, okay, I'm really interested in offensive stuff. I like network security. Like, okay, well, probably sounds like maybe red teaming or even blue teaming would kind of be the thing you would naturally gravitate towards. And looking at companies that do that sort of thing and what they're looking for would be a great place to figure out, well, you know, what sorts of skills should I start building, and what sorts of things would make me really attractive to those sorts of companies who do what I want to do. So I would just say, like, don't go too broad. Cybersecurity is huge. Focus on what you like to do and what you would spend extra time staying up doing, even if you didn't have a class that was making you do it, because you're just interested in that. If you can align your career with that, you'll have a much better time than picking just a general cybersecurity career and ending up, you know, maybe working in a SOC when you really don't want to. And like, you would rather be out there doing stuff, and instead you're sitting back and like watching like indicators of compromise that like don't mean anything most of the time.
And kind of reiterate a point there. If you specialize in a very particular thing, it'll make you more valuable to, you know, a red team or a blue team, because you're that person that they go to when they want to test a certain aspect of the security of a system, right? Because you're going to have more specialized knowledge.
We also had a question. Have you ever used BlackEye? Yes, I did a Nullbyte episode, I believe, on using BlackEye, in which I repeatedly made it sound like I was saying black guy, which was very funny. But yes, we totally did cover that tool on Nullbyte, and if you want to just look on that channel for the entire episode, then you can find out how it went. Although, that was, I think, at least a year and a half, if not years ago. So I don't know
It
if
may
the
be a
tool
little
is
out of
still
date.
maintained or if it still works the way that it worked back then. So just something to keep in mind.
Oh, and a point I forgot about the ethical hacking thing is we do have a couple of previous live streams on like careers in hacking and stuff like that. So if you go back on our SecurityFWD channel, you can find those and get more detailed information.
So also, how is LA? Are you melting from the heat yet? Guess what, sucker? We got out of there before it got too hot. Although, actually, we were there for some of the hottest days of the year up until that point.
It was pretty toasty.
So, yeah, I got to remember what it was like to be in an apartment that never got below 85 degrees. And also what it was like to have the sun be more of like a radiation source than like a sense of something that brings life.
Let's just say that the AC in my Airbnb just froze into a solid block of ice because I had it on constantly.
Yeah, it was pretty rugged. So I will say, we will be visiting Los Angeles, probably to work with Null Space Labs, and I think we might even be doing DEF CON and Black Hat. I'm not sure yet, but it seems hot there, you guys. Like, it just seems real hot. So we'll see about that. I think we'll be visiting, but I'm not sure if we're going to come back to Los Angeles full time, just because the heat, man, it's just hot and on fire a lot too.
Yeah. Okay, so you want to... Let me do another one from the channel. Okay. The next one was, what do you think about the Amazon Sidewalk Mesh network hacking into our routers?
Ooh. Well, okay, is that really... Yeah, no, it kind of is. So for a long time, there have been businesses that will get like a vendor or an internet service provider router, like a Spectrum router, and then they will go ahead and like connect it to their business, and then there will be a free network for other like AT&T customers or Spectrum customers or whatever
Spectrum
that
does
people
it a lot.
can log into, and they like most businesses are not aware of the fact that they're hosting like a sidewalk network effectively for all of these like random customers of the. And the other thing that's kind of weird is that in an effort to save data, when carriers sell like an iPhone or an Android phone, they'll often pre-program in these Wi-Fi networks. So phones from AT&T or whatever will automatically, or T-Mobile will automatically try to connect to these like sidewalk networks that the same carrier will put out in an attempt to migrate data. So you're kind of paying for data that other devices are using, and it's not helping you. It's only helping other people and the person who's selling you the connection. It has no benefit to you. So this is kind of a similar situation where they're like, oh yeah, you want your devices to work real well? Well, guess what? We're going to borrow your neighbor's data. But shh, we're also going to borrow yours. And it's that's not really... people didn't ask for that.
That's I think the sketchiest part of this is that it's very, very hard to opt out, and it automatically opts you in. And then on top of that, you can be charged for the data it's using, right? At least with the Spectrum stuff, that data, it's providing its own router on top of whatever connection you're paying for. So ostensibly, you're not paying for people to connect to the Wi-Fi in that. But with the Amazon Sidewalk, you're paying for anyone's Amazon devices around you to use your internet, and there's no incentive for you to do that, right? So
so this is Zam is specifying that this uses LoRa, and of course that means other Amazon devices would be able to do that,
right?
Would be able to connect back to these networks and use data that is from other people's routers. I just find the entire concept sketchy because when you give permission to a device to access your network, you generally don't think that device is going to create a giant chain of other devices all sucking data down and then drag them through the connection of your router. I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to turn your infrastructure into their infrastructure and make a piggyback network. And lots of people have kind of tried to do this in different ways. This is just one of the ones where if you don't, odds are you're going to use one of their devices because they're incredibly cheap and lots of people use them. They're very well supported. So they're just relying on people's reluctance to tear this out, really, to introduce some features that probably, if they were originally included, maybe would not have made these products very attractive.
What I would say is, ethically speaking, what they're doing is they're trying to enable a feature where, if the power goes out or something happens to your internet connection, that IoT device at your house can use this network, the sidewalk network, to still connect back home, right? But what they ethically should do is it should be an opt-in, and where it's like, okay, this feature is available. If you want to take part in this feature, then you will also be sharing your internet. Do you want to opt into this? Yes, no. But it just automatically does it.
Well, the whole AirTags thing, in some ways, is kind of similar, where people were like, hey, I can arbitrarily upload data from any passing Apple device. Cool. Thanks for the free C2 server, Apple. Like, potentially maybe the same thing could be done if people were able to manipulate this to upload arbitrary data.
Yeah,
you never know.
I would say potentially there. I haven't seen anything along those lines yet, but
not yet. Well,
keyword.
How long has it been on?
Yeah, like a week or two. So, anyway, the next question is actually very similar, so I want to do that one real quick. Can you please make a video with an ASUS router and how to secure its Merlin firmware by configuration? I'm just going to generalize this a little more to could we make a video on locking down your router? We have several live streams along those lines, like setting up pfSense. Also, Ubiquiti equipment is pretty nice in those regards. A lot of the ISP provided routers are just awful. So I would stay away from those. But would you want to do a video on that sometime?
I typically shy away from vendor-specific videos, and this is a very vendor-specific question. I mean, if there is an open source, if this is an open WRT or something, then sure. But I would also then want to just do a getting started with open WRT,
right?
Something like that.
We could maybe do a video that's more generalized, settings, making sure that you don't have ports publicly available, making sure you have open to the internet, whatever.
I'm sorry, Jay Silver, your question got me with with what do you think of the pillow guy saying he has PCAPs showing China attacked us?
Okay, I will.
I'm sorry, I can't get into any discussion about the pillow guy for multiple internet reasons. But let's just say I don't put a lot of stock in his expert opinions about cyber compromise or really anything to do with computers. Pillows, ask that man. But anything else, I
don't know. He strikes me as the sort of guy that wouldn't even know anything about pillows. He just knows how to market pillows.
He knows how to sell them.
Yeah.
Apparently.
The best books to start with networking.
I would say No Starch Press is my go-to referral for people looking for books on cybersecurity. I know they have a lot of really good authors. I've heard a lot of good feedback. Unfortunately, I don't have a specific book I can recommend, but I can recommend them as a publisher because I've read some good books from them, and I know that they go out of their way to stay in touch with the hacker community and recruit really good experts. So that would be my recommendation.
Oh, and no, we didn't get our haircut because of the weather. Yes. Well, I guess partially because of the weather.
Yes, I absolutely did.
I just wanted a haircut.
It felt like I was wearing a scarf every time I would go outside.
Long hair and hot showers, not great combination in my opinion. Okay, but onward. Let's see.
Wait, what does that mean?
Your wet hair just clings to you when you get out of the shower, and it's awful feel. I don't know. I don't like it.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a question here, which was, which is the best way to make your reverse shell persistent?
It depends. It depends. Sorry, it depends. I mean, what do you like ransomwaring an IoT system or
yeah, this was exploring open Wi-Fi network, open Wi-Fi security.
So sometimes there's three types of questions we get. We get illegal questions. Or unethical questions. We get random technical questions without context that require a lot of explanation to give a useful answer, and then we get questions that we can answer, and it's 25% these ones, and the rest is just all of these. So I when giving us a question, how do I make a fully undetectable script? Undetectable from what? For how long? On what system? Is the system patched? Is there a vulnerability? A fully updated system? What operating system? What are you trying to accomplish whilst hiding? All of those things. It just requires so much information. You need to if you don't. it's hard to tell you guys like what the best thing to use a particular offensive script for is, because I haven't had absolutely every experience with every script. I've covered lots of tools, like hundreds of tools at this point. So I can tell you what tool does what, or like which tool might be the best one to use for something, but I can't really tell you like how to make a fully undetectable script. Like I don't know what you're hiding from. Like I don't know what you're hiding and what you're hiding from, and I don't know what you're trying to do whilst hiding. So just guidelines for really asking any sort of like technical question. Just we need to know either a lot more information, and then honestly, if it's sketchy, we still won't answer you.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot more information, or just like ask us about like which program would be the best to explore this sort of attack. Like, and we can probably give you a much better answer. But for that one, I would say like there's lots of things like I don't know like it's too like Meterpreter, I guess,
Okay.
if you want something that has a lot of documentation to establish like persistence and go from there. Like, but you know, it's a very general answer for a kind of general question.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, another question we had here was, what's a good tool for scanning for XSS vulnerabilities?
I don't know.
No.
Yeah, sorry.
We don't, I don't know.
Cross-site scripting vulnerabilities have not been
Yeah.
something we focused on. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, and also that speaks to the point we had before, where you do want to kind of specialize in some field to some degree, because like it's very difficult to know everything in cybersecurity. It's just such a broad field. Okay, I will go back to these questions.
Well, let me do one from the chat.
Okay.
If you're looking to either go for IT or computer science to get started in cybersecurity, I would say IT. Or at least networking. Networking is probably the more fundamental skill that you can get started with faster, unless you absolutely love math and you really just like need to know how computers work. If that's how you are, like if you need to know how a computer processes a program and like it's very important to you, and also you love math, I can't stress that enough, then go into computer science. It probably pays a bit more. But it will also take more schooling, and it will be a much longer time before you get towards anything that's really that security related, because you'll have a lot of fundamentals that are totally unrelated first that you have to get out of the way. Networking actually gets into security pretty quickly, because networks can be relatively simple and still be attacked. So I would say if you really want to get into cybersecurity and you have no background in either field and all things are equal, IT or specifically networking would be the way to go. Just my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, so 8-Bit Oni was asking about turning a Raspberry Pi into a honeypot. I will mention that we will have a honeypot video on Tuesday about using not the Raspberry Pi, but an ESP8266 as an FTP honeypot. I know we did an article on Nullbyte a while back about what is it, with Pumpkin Pie or something like that?
That is not what that is. That's an offensive tool.
Oh, there was another honeypot, I think. I don't remember the name of it.
I don't remember doing a honeypot video.
Okay.
I don't think we did.
I will consult.
Yeah,
the
but
Google.
if we switch over to my screen, so we got you. Don't worry. We didn't do this video, but we're going to in a live stream coming up. But if you want to skip ahead, that's fine. You can check out another maker's video on turning a Raspberry Pi into a Thinks Canary with OpenCanary. So OpenCanary is open source software that turns the Raspberry Pi into a honeypot that allows you to basically disguise it as a number of different services. And if anybody tries to connect to it, then it will report back and actually alert you that somebody's poking around in your system. And the intention here is that if you really want to set up a device that nobody should ever access and is basically an indicator of somebody poking around where they shouldn't be poking around, then this is a great way to get started for the cost of basically just a Raspberry Pi. Although on our next stream, we are going to be covering an even cheaper version that runs on this particular ESP8266, which is like $3, and mimics an FTP server that you can actually upload files to, which is pretty cool, and mimic like a Synology file share on your network that is just exposed on the local network and has a vulnerable password. So This is a super cool project. So stand by for the video on using the really low cost device, but also you can make a more configurable one with the Raspberry Pi, and you don't have to wait for us. You can skip ahead on this if you want to, because frankly, I'm learning most of what I'm getting from this from another maker's video, because he did a really good job of documenting it.
And a good point comes up here, and we could do a video on the general basics of what a honeypot is, and then like the different types of honeypots, who uses them, and why they might use them in different scenarios. While we are on 8-Bit Oni, I have a question of his from one of our older videos as well.
See, if you leave a question on our videos, you get noticed.
Yeah. So basically, it was asking about how what parts were used in the antenna and stuff for the how far can Wi-Fi really travel. So I think in that video we used two different ones. There's the simple Wi-Fi Yagi antenna, and then was it the alpha wireless parametric antenna? What's the parabolic antenna? So we didn't really build either of those. You can make a like a Pringles can Wi-Fi antenna that's sort of similar to the Yagi one. I haven't seen anyone do that in like many years though. I think Cody is working on pulling.
No, go ahead and switch over.
Okay.
So we have a great relationship with Alpha Wireless. They're awesome and super nice. And they've sent us all kinds of crazy antennas and stuff. The most glorious of which are the outdoor antennas. You can see these are supposed to be like made for boats and stuff. So typically we use the Tube UN or the Tube UNA is the actual adapter we use. And then there's all these like attachments we can put on it. So let's see, on the product there's like a Wi-Fi outdoor
antenna.
And
then two.
You can see, so for this experiment, we actually on the SecurityFWD video where we tried like an omnidirectional antenna versus one of these, we used one of these really big omnidirectional ones. But you can see they also have, we didn't use this Yagi one, but they have Yagi ones, omnidirectional. Man, here it is. So this is the grid antenna that they sent us, and it is crazy. Now, when we were at DEF CON, we met up with our friends at Raul at Simple Wi-Fi, and he gave us the display one. They were like packing up. I was like, hey, can we want to put this on our channel? Can we? And they just gave us one of these, and they are awesome. I really like these. They are in a tube so that they, you don't like end up messing up the metal, or it doesn't wear like when it's outside. But it's just a Yagi antenna that's dual band, and it's really simple to use with a variety of different antennas. It is also significantly easier to carry, unfortunately, than this awesome giant parabolic grid. So, damn, this thing is like, I mean, obviously use this thing if you have the opportunity to mount it on your boat or whatever. But if you're limited and your boat's not that big, or you just have a backpack to transport things in, then we found that the simple Wi-Fi Yagi dual band antenna is actually fantastic, and I'm really glad that they graced us with this.
I was gonna say I like the Yagi one just because it's more portable and stuff. Like the parabolic antenna, it is very obvious that you're doing something. Like it's great if you need, like you're on a farm or something, and you need a point-to-point connection. Great, use it for that. If you're doing like some Wi-Fi security stuff, Yagi might be a little.
If you're a performance guy or gal, go with the parabolic grid.
Okay.
We have this great still from I think one of our Hack 5 videos where we're like, I'm sitting in a graveyard with with this antenna on a tripod, just like on my computer, like scoping out Wi-Fi networks from like a couple miles away, and it really makes an impression. I will say, people give you a wide berth.
Okay. Here's a question that you might have a little more knowledge on. Can someone explain why some LAN-connected devices advertise themselves over Wi-Fi and others do not when scanning with Kisnet?
No. I don't. So, like, why some wired devices are included and why some are not?
Yeah, I'm guessing something along those lines.
I don't know. I mean, I would say if packets are being sent to and from these devices that are like part of the network, but not on the like wireless part, then you would still see the destination and be able to infer there were devices there. But a lot of a lot of this would just be like identifying MAC addresses, because everything except the MAC address and some other information would be encrypted if the network was an encrypted Wi-Fi network. So if it's an open network, this would be much easier to infer. If it was an encrypted network, then that would be harder to infer, because like half the information, the IP addresses, is going to be hidden from you, and you won't be able to interpret it. So it kind of, that's a complicated networking question. That's the best answer I can give, is maybe leaks from the addressing of packets would be enough to infer the existence of other devices on the network which were not actually part of the wireless portion.
Oh, I actually love this idea. Putting a patch antenna inside a stuffed teddy bear. Like, can you imagine like an ESP8266 just in a teddy bear?
Doing what?
I don't know what it's doing yet. Just put a big lithium-ion battery in there and let it have fun.
I still like the light bulb idea better.
Yeah. Okay, let me do another one from channel. Give me a second so I can read this better. Cain and Abel is easier and much more stable than BetterCap, but you could use it in a virtual machine on Windows. I just wanted to see, what do you think of Cain and Abel? Have you used it? Is that something we could do a video on?
I am not going to get into a fight about which cracking program is better, but I will say Cain and Abel is very, very old.
Okay.
And I don't know when the last time it was updated was.
Ooh, that would be interesting.
Let's take a look.
Yeah. I'll wait until you get it pulled up.
I don't even know if it's on GitHub. It's one of those programs where it might be a Linux port. See, it's not even actually on GitHub. Like, that's here. Let's see.
That's wild.
Cain and Abel is a past. Now it's just called Cain. What happened to Abel? Last updated 5 years ago. This is so. Okay,
yeah. That's
people always refer to these programs that are like based on a 2014 version of another program. But like the problem here is, like, I don't know which one of these. Like, this was updated 4 years ago. Like, where? So
yeah.
I like, when I'm teaching beginners projects or when I'm referring to projects, I like projects that are have a lot of community support, are active, and have usually been updated within the last like year. So what was it versus like?
It was versus BetterCap.
Oh, versus BetterCap?
Yeah, BetterCap's been updated very recently, I feel like.
It's a safe assumption. So, I mean, just comparing the two projects, BetterCap was updated 25 days ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, I mean, obviously...
I know which one I would rather use just based on that.
And I can, like, contact the developer on this if I have, like, a question. So, like, I'm not, again, don't want to get into a fight about which one's better. Obviously, Cain and Abel's been around for a long time and is very useful. But at the same time, like, when trying out programs or showing off programs, will tend to go with the one that's under active development, whose developers I can ask.
Yeah.
If at all possible.
Okay. Let me go back. I'm just going to clear up some of the questions I have in the log here. Oh, yeah. So, is there another platform we do our videos on? Yes, we stream to Twitch, Periscope. Periodically, we stream to Facebook, on the Veronis Facebook, but we don't really do that often. What platform am I missing? YouTube, obviously. LinkedIn. And then LinkedIn for all the peoples. But yeah, so if any of our streams are going out or something like that.
A quick guide on how to not get your question answered. Post it 6 times in a row verbatim. Thank you, Patil.
Yeah. Yes, our moderators will take care of that.
Yeah.
Okay. A question from Zam here, a comment. This one will forever be known as the Forbidden Stream. Yes, we did ride the struggle bus on getting hacking React scenes done.
Yeah, thank you guys for writing that one out with us. Yeah. It was fun, if a little difficult. We definitely found that we could not do this kind of live stream when it comes to that sort of thing, but we can do a premiere. But Premiere is just fine. So, yeah, but that also means we have to split our chat into 2, because we can't do Premiere. Like, Premieres aren't the same as live streams. Right. So, like, it just kind of creates a mess where, like, we have 2 separate chats and, like... But, again, it was fun. So, it also didn't get taken down. So, we managed to find a compromise last time where, it was... not immediately screened. And while we did get like a copyright notice that like people in Germany
can't
might not be able to
monetize
see it,
but we don't monetize it anyway.
yeah,
so.
exactly. We don't care. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, like we might try it again if you guys liked it. I thought it was really fun to check in on how like the mainstream population just kind of like perceives what hacking is.
Yeah.
Although I will say some of the scenes were whack.
Yeah, certainly. We probably won't do any in the next like week or two, but one we might do in the nearish future is one specifically dedicated to Mr. Robot. So maybe
because
like
there's so many.
just
there's
looking
so many
at
good scenes
season
there.
1, we'll go through like all the hacking scenes there and see how realistic they are.
Michael, did we get vaccinated?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Jab,
we have
jab.
full 5G reception.
Yes, I've been microchipped. Yeah, I can't even go too far down that joke because I don't want to feed people.
Zam is gonna ban you because
Yeah.
it says no conspiracy theories.
Exactly. Okay. Oh, that would actually be interesting. I wonder if a mod can ban another mod.
I can ban you right now, I guess.
Okay.
From this desk.
So the next question we had here, poison tap. Does that still work? Is it something you've used?
So Poison Tap is an interesting attack by a Sammy Cam card that allows you to use a Raspberry Pi to plug into a locked device and do sneaky things via Ethernet by pretending to be an Ethernet dongle. I have actually not tried this attack out. I also don't think it has probably been updated for a while.
Yeah.
Let's see if it passes my smell test for... Okay, so let's switch over to my screen. All right, so we see that there are 84 issues, and it was last updated 3 years ago. So,
Yeah.
in my non-professional opinion, I would say that there are probably some problems that are currently...
I was gonna say this seems like one of those like proof of concept projects that they just wanted to demonstrate like this is a thing.
Yeah, like this is a vulnerability, this can work, but like I'm not going to spend the rest of my career updating this project.
Yeah.
Yes. So, does this project still work? Maybe, but the odds are probably not, just based on the number of issues and how long ago it has been since it was updated. But I mean, it is a really cool project, and when it did work, it was something really amazing. That's not saying it doesn't work. I haven't tried it, but I would just say don't be surprised if it doesn't at this point.
Okay. What is our war driving setup?
Oh, that's a great question. So there's a couple different war driving setups that I really like. Currently, I tend to use any Android phone using Wiggle Wi-Fi. It is super easy to war drive not only Wi-Fi devices, but also Bluetooth devices and cellular towers and all sorts of other like fun and interesting things. So, you know, if you really want to just be sneaky about it, just grab any old Android phone and you can use it as a dedicated war driving device, either in your car or somewhere else. And like, you know, I will say it works really well. You can download your data in a number of interesting formats. Alex, Lynn, and I have done exactly that, like taking the data from these and interpreting in different ways, just to learn about devices around us or where another device might pop up a couple times. Now, if you need more information, then you can use Kismet, which I typically will run on a Raspberry Pi with a GPS connected. I know Alex Lynn has put together an ESP8266 plus GPS-based war driving kit, which is really cool, and I have not personally used yet. But aside from that, I think that, yeah, the Raspberry Pi also has the ability to scan for Bluetooth devices. So it makes it a pretty good platform. I would say like the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus is my favorite. The Raspberry Pi 4 doesn't have as compatible of a wireless network adapter. So typically, if I'm going to be doing war driving, I'll be using a GPS, like a USB GPS module plugged into a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus. And then if I really want to get some range on it, I will plug in like an Alpha or Panda wireless network adapter, which typically have really good support, especially if I want to do like a dual band, like long range scan or something like that. So
yeah, and I was going to say, we do have a video on this, the Signals Intelligence with Kismet, that goes into much more detail about like the kind of setups and the kind of things you can do war driving wise. So if you want to check out that stream, I will drop that in the chat.
Here's a good question on Hack 5 products. What would you recommend, a rubber ducky or a bash bunny? What would you recommend, Michael?
I don't really use either enough to give.
Have you ever touched a bash bunny?
There's
Cool.
probably one in a plastic bin that I've
Within
touched
5 feet of you right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess being the only person that's touched both of those devices, frankly, I use the USB rubber ducky more. I just find them to be really useful, and there's so many different situations where I can just like immediately either use it for something I'm doing or use it to make some other thing weaponized and easier to deploy. Also, projects like Spacehune's Wi-Fi duck are a great evolution of this, where you can plug in a device that acts as a USB rubber ducky, but store files on it, execute code remotely, or even code remotely on it. The Wi-Fi, the ability to connect over Wi-Fi is a really interesting thing, and I think makes it that much more useful. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, do you have a Bluetooth scanner recommendation? Want to be able to detect if there are AirTags in packages.
Interesting question. So I haven't been able to find like a scheme yet for the MAC addresses that AirTags are using to positively identify them in Wiggle Wi-Fi. I typically am just using my smartphone, running my Android smartphone, running Wiggle Wi-Fi, scanning for Bluetooth devices, and I get up real close to the source and identify it by signal strength. So, like, I will basically scan over, like, if I was doing what you're doing, I would have an Android phone where I'm scanning over a box, like, looking for Bluetooth signals. And if I get a spike in one particular one, I can assume that there's a Bluetooth signal there. I can tap on it, I can look at the manufacturer, and I can learn more information all from the Wiggle Wi-Fi app. So, if you have a iOS device, you can't do it. But if you have an Android device, then that would be my recommendation for like the cheapest way to start scanning for these sorts of devices.
There's also the Ubertooth. I think it's like an SDR that if you want to get into more like Bluetooth hacking and stuff. What was the GitHub project for the ESP8266 with the GPS?
That's going to be Alex Lin. I'll find it. Give me just a second.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely drop your questions in the chat. Let's see. I'm picking through here.
Here, let me go ahead. I'll go ahead and drop Alex Lin's GitHub in the chat so you guys can see it.
Do you want me to show your screen?
No.
Okay.
But basically, you can go through his repositories, and I'm pretty sure he has the ESP8266 based war driving kit there.
Yeah. What was that called?
Oh, Arduino GPS logger. I think that might be it.
GPS throwy.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Wait, and then also the ESP drive-by is the ESP platform. Oh yeah, you can switch over now.
Yeah.
So I think this one might be the correct project. And you can see there's a bit of documentation. And I think that we actually did a video on this, so you can check that out. But we'll also probably have Alex back to show off one of these projects because they're really cool, and he also makes printed circuit boards for them. So if you wanted to put together one of your own, I think he's working on putting together a kit to be able to do it, which is really, really cool. So,
is there a way to do something similar to bad USB on an Android device without rooting or installing NetHunter in Termex?
So, like using your Android phone
device
as a bad USB.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that be possible, just because you have to control the way that the phone is connecting with the is connecting with the computer, and usually this is a very locked down thing. Like controlling the USB connection, whatever, like is a great way for a phone to get hacked. So in most cases, you have to go through a lot of stuff, and it's locked down to the point that most apps or whatever don't have access to controlling this. So I found like the USB support to be pretty poor for this sort of thing so far, unless of course you've like rooted it or like done something else fancy. So unfortunately, I don't know of a good way of doing this at the moment. I know there have been some projects around trying to do it, but most of them require you to take the extra step of like rooting your device or doing something like that.
Okay, what do you think about Duckduino, turning an Android or an Arduino into a rubber ducky?
There are many projects like this. So I don't know about Duckduino. But
yeah, I don't think I've actually heard of that one before.
Yeah, but I do know about using like the Digispark to do effectively the same thing. And the Digispark is like less than $1. It's like a really
They're
cheap...
dirt cheap.
Yeah, it's a really cheap microcontroller that you can find on AliExpress. And then like the step up would be, using like a Beetle like SAMD something. Don't want to say the wrong chip name. Let me try to pull it up on AliExpress.
Okay. There's other. Sorry, sifting through questions here.
Yeah. So like, there's some microcontrollers that are really good for doing this sort of thing. But
Shall I?
no,
No.
it's just pulling up electronic cables. Like there's a specific board that I was like looking for.
That's
that
the
is a-
perils of looking for stuff on AliExpress. Is sometimes it'll give you exactly what you want, and then other times it's just like trying to interpret what they would call this device.
Yes, hilarious. All right, you can switch over now. So this board is an ATmega 32U4, and is one of the boards that I like to use in like whenever I can't find a USB rubber ducky. And it can also be combined with an ESP8266 to make a Wi-Fi duck, and then you have a Wi-Fi enabled USB rubber ducky. I believe Spacesoon also has PCB boards, which are really cheap, that you can either make yourself or buy, and just slap those two components together and get the resulting device, which is pretty cool. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's do another one from the logs. Okay, what if, so this is for the creep detector one, which is actually something we were talking about earlier. What if the creep would switch off his Wi-Fi? Can something similar be made with cell phone signals?
Interesting question. So to refresh you on Alex Lynn's creep detector, this was a project that used Kismet, I believe on a Raspberry Pi, to be able to figure out whether or not someone was following you. So the point of this, of course, is to make it so someone's phone signals are making them vulnerable to electronic, I guess, counter snooping. So like using the emissions from someone's phone to detect if they have been in proximity to you in two different places that don't really make sense. Oh, cool. You switched over, but I didn't want you to yet.
Oh,
Great. Anyway, the point here is, can you turn off your Wi-Fi and make it so that you're immune to this sort of detection? And, okay, go ahead and switch over now. So this is an example of being detected. We had a particular MAC address, which is, I think, this one color, that was detected in a number of different places that were too far apart to be a coincidence. So indicating that they were
They're, like,
following
yeah.
the person that was recording the information. So if you just turned off your Wi-Fi, would this go away? The answer is no. You would not ping as often, but your phone runs a number of services to attempt to geolocate itself that do send out packets. And these packets can be recorded, and then you've blown your cover again. So turning off your Wi-Fi does not actually stop your phone from sending out Wi-Fi signals at all. In fact, assisted GPS or AGPS will use Wi-Fi signals and attempt to like send out active beacons and do other things that require using your phone's MAC address in order to locate itself. So unless you explicitly disable the setting, your phone will continue to send out these packets and identify itself even when you tell it to stop using Wi-Fi, and even after you press airplane mode. So kind of interesting. This is something that you should definitely check out if you are concerned about being tracked in this way. And that's why this is a really good question, because most people assume like, oh, well, I'll just turn off my phone's Wi-Fi. No, that actually won't prevent you from being caught following someone, for example, from using this method. So the other question is, can you do this sort of thing from cell phone signals? Well, not as easily. This is where you would need to get into like
rogue
pretending
cell towers.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Okay.
Yes, you would need to get into doing something like a cell site simulator, where you're actually tricking devices into connecting to you and then sharing an ID, because that sort of stuff wouldn't be accessible just out and over the wire. Could you track down the source of a signal? Yes, but you couldn't uniquely identify that user without first doing some man-in-the-middle stuff.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to do the final question from the previous videos just so we have those all done. So basically this one is from our ransomware video and talking about how you can use canary tokens on like secret looking files to tell when someone's accessing them. But also he points out that we leave out a lot of the stuff about how you don't get caught and stuff like that. So I just wanted to take this as an opportunity to talk like, yes, you know, we're here as an education channel, but we're not here to educate hackers on how to perform the best ransomware attacks, right? Like, these videos are intended to provide viewers with knowledge to know how these attacks work and how they might better defend themselves, not necessarily provide all the minutiae of detail.
Two great questions. Can Wi-Fi and Bluetooth be used to improve the creep detector? Yes. So, for example, if you were able to incorporate Bluetooth, you would be able to see any Bluetooth device that doesn't randomize its MAC address. And this includes things like car stereos or other things that you just wouldn't, like your headphones, like other random accessories that you might not expect to be just broadcasting all the time using the exact same MAC address. So lack of MAC address randomization makes lots of Bluetooth devices very, very trackable by this sort of technique. So if you were just like, I'm so cool, I'm going to turn off my phone's like Wi-Fi, I'm going to turn off my phone while I track this dude. Well, maybe like your car's Bluetooth stereo and your Bluetooth earbuds and your Bluetooth, like whatever other device, like fitness tracker or whatever, are all broadcasting using a MAC address that never changes. Did you guys know that police body cameras, or at least by default, the last time I interviewed the main person in charge of security at that company, do not change their MAC address as they walk around. So these are basically Bluetooth beacons that are giving off their location to anybody who can triangulate them using something like Wiggle Wi-Fi or Kismet or the creep detector. So yes, Bluetooth devices would definitely improve the creep detector. It would kind of give you a whole new way of being able to track these devices. But then we had a follow-up question. How do you account for Android MAC address spoofing? So Android MAC address spoofing, it kind of depends on which settings you enable and which version of Android or flavor of Android you're on. Because a carrier flavor of Android might, like the Samsung version of Android, whatever, might have this setting automatically turned off or on or whatever.
Right.
But I'm using a Pixel, so I'm getting the original version. And I believe it is still an opt-in thing where you have to say that you want to have advanced whatever, because it will make it so that your Android phone, every time you connect to a network, uses a different randomized MAC address. Now, is that a good thing if you have a firewall or something that's trying to make a MAC address whitelist? No, it's going to mess everything up. And I believe that's why it's still opt-in. But like a Windows computer, what it should do is assign a random MAC address per network and then only, and basically use that one random MAC address when you're connecting to that one particular Wi-Fi network. That's usually the way they kind of like compromise on that behavior.
An interesting point though too, is, so with our home network, for example, Cody is the only one that does MAC randomization. So I can actually tell every time like he gets on his phone or wakes up or reconnects to the network, because I get an alert that a new device has joined the network. And it also, if you're trying to do any kind of like analytics on your network to optimize it, it makes it very difficult because you can't track how much, like I was trying to track like how much internet is each device using, so that way, I could optimize things. That makes that task a little more difficult.
Yes. So the question was, so now that we've explained how this sort of MAC address randomization works, the question is, how do we account for this? Well, there's a number of different things we can do. One is, if that device has ever joined a hidden network before, then it will always call out looking for that network until the end of time, or until that person deletes the network from their saved network list, which no one ever does. And that will act like just tagging it. And you will basically, even though that device is constantly changing its randomized MAC address, you will still be able to figure out what it is, because it will basically give itself away by asking for this network. Now, another way you can do this is by broadcasting networks that it's likely that device has connected to before. Now, if it is using an older version of Android, or if it is not randomizing its MAC address by default, it should drop its randomized MAC address and then connect back to that network using the same MAC address every time. So we can actually kind of slice through MAC address randomization here by getting a positive correlation between maybe like an open Wi-Fi network of a coffee shop, or Google Starbucks or whatever, by broadcasting a bunch of fake networks that it's very likely that person has connected to at some point in their lives before, maybe a hotel Wi-Fi network, whatever. We can get their phone to be like, yes, I have connected to this network before, and here's the MAC address I used to connect to it. So if it's using the same MAC address to connect to every network, you've got the real MAC address and you can identify the device. But if you are able to, let's say you have a pretty good idea that this device is the same device because it's always reacting to Google Starbucks. Let's say you also get like Marriott Wi-Fi. Okay, now you have the same device reacting to 2 networks all the time. Like, you can start to create a fingerprint of that device by which networks it responds to and which networks are stored in the target's saved network list or trusted network list. So there's kind of 2 layers to identification. First, like, okay, there's a device that's moving with me and has like the same signal strength or something like that. That's one way we can detect it. The second is, all right, if we hit it, if we interrogate it by sending it a bunch of fake networks, does it respond to the same fingerprint of fake networks? Like, that person's been to the same, it's the same phone, it's been to the same places. And if so, does it give us the same MAC address? So this is a way that we can strip back MAC address randomization and still positively identify devices that might be following us, but trying to disguise who they are by changing the MAC address while they're just out and about. Some of this, again, requires active measures like active interrogation, but the reason why I'm so excited about it is this is the research that Stefan, myself, and Matthew Van Hoff all kind of work on, like, sort of together. Like, Matthew comes up with these really great attacks that work against all Wi-Fi devices. I study them and like observe how they work in the real world, and then Stefan and I work to build them into things like the Wi-Fi deauthor, so that we can show off like ways that you can defeat MAC address randomization or do some of these things that seem really fancy and technical, but actually aren't that difficult. Like, you know, making a big list of fake networks, broadcasting them, and then listening in for which devices are connecting to which network.
Okay, speaking of ESPs, is there a project that turns something like an ESP32 into a wiggle node?
I don't know. What kind of wiggle node?
I'm assuming just like something that automatically uploads to Wiggle.
I don't know.
I think Alex Lin did something like this with the Hackbyte video that's about to go out, where essentially it's monitoring for Wi-Fi devices around it and then uploading it to a server somewhere. So you would just need to like get the API for Wiggle and interface it with that, I think. But it's a pretty close
Yeah,
thing.
well, I mean, it doesn't get GPS. It's in a fixed location.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's Alex Lin is about to do a project on Hack5 that, as Michael said, is like a device detector that looks for a specific device coming in range, or really any device is coming in range. So you can detect when someone's like in a room or when a particular device gets home. But yeah, as far as the ESP32, I don't know. If you're talking about like a war driving kit using the ESP32, yes, absolutely. Because the ESP32 is able to see more of the packets than the ESP8266 is able to. When you're sniffing packets on the ESP8266, it's cut off after the packet headers, so you can't see more information that might be really useful or interesting for some types of Wi-Fi hacking stuff you would want to do.
And I'm afraid we are out of time.
Oh yeah, and I'm almost out of battery. No one plugged this thing in.
Yeah.
Whoops. All right, I'm on 4%. So yeah, I guess that's it, you guys. Lots of great questions today. And if you didn't get your question answered, make sure to go ahead and comment on the YouTube channel, SecurityFWD, or just show up to our next Q&A, and we're happy to answer your questions. These ones were a lot of fun, and I really enjoy getting the opportunity to hear what you guys think about our videos, and also maybe get some ideas for upcoming videos from what you guys have suggested, because we've actually done that several times now. So thank you guys again for being part of our community, for inspiring us to do a lot of this really fun work, and getting to do these Q&As with you guys is always really cool. So
yeah. And be sure to check out Killian's videos on the Veronis brand channel, where he does threat update. Do you remember what days he does that? He does that every week, so be sure to check that out. And we do these Q&As every other Wednesday. So until next time.
Yep, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks, Sam, for the moderation. Thanks to everyone for the questions. See you later. Bye.